in my mind, students could start a business today with zero cost to themselves.
Welcome, friends, to We Thrive Life, the podcast where we ask real questions, get real answers, and share real experiences. Thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be talking about the myths and reality of starting your own business. With us today is Landon Smith. Landon is the entrepreneur in residence at Southern Utah University's Dixie Levitt School of Business, where he teaches entrepreneurship courses and mentors students launching their own ventures. Let's hop into it. Landon, before we get into advice, what originally drew you to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think when I was going through my undergraduate degree, I always had maybe an inkling or a draw to business generally, but never thought that would be a career path. And then as I finished my undergrad and I did law school and got an MBA with it, it was really during that time where I started to really dig into the possibilities of entrepreneurship, and probably partly because of necessity. Like as a law student, we were extremely poor, and most of your time is committed to studying and learning those principles, right, in law school. But during my free minutes, hours, weekends, whatever it was, I really dove into entrepreneurship pretty heavily. One, because, hey, I need some extra money, but two, because it just interests me. And so I really just became kind of a consumer of information at that point. And it took really probably a few years of just consuming information and understanding what entrepreneurship was, what it could be, before I really started to dive into my own opportunities.
Cool. Entrepreneurship is heavily romanticized, especially online. When you hear phrases like be your own boss or financial freedom, what do you think young adults misunderstand most about what entrepreneurship actually looks like day to day?
Probably the thing, at least in my experience with students and my own entrepreneurial ventures, probably the thing I think they misunderstand most is the effort required when you start. Because yes, you can be your own boss, you can make good money and do all these things, right? But that comes at a cost and a sacrifice required to build those opportunities, to build the time freedom, to build the monetary success, whatever it might be. And so I think maybe the misconception is, hey, we can get into entrepreneurship and we can make something succeed easily. When in reality, just like anything good that you want to have happen in your life, you've got to be willing to put in time, effort, work, and as part of that, be willing to fail, because it's certainly going to happen at some point. I don't know any entrepreneur that's 10 for 10 or 100% on any business, that they've tried to run. And so being willing and okay with the idea that failure may happen, it will happen, and that the work required of you, especially in the beginning, may be more than you ever imagined. And you may think to yourself, why didn't I go back and get a 9 to 5 job or something easier where I can show up and leave, right? But if you're willing to wade through that, be a part of that, then I think entrepreneurship can be a great opportunity. But you got to know that there is that requirement of the work and the consistency, especially in the beginning.
Jump back just a little bit. What are the entrepreneurship ventures that you have gone through?
Yeah, so I referenced my time in law school. So even in law school, I started to dabble in a few different things and try different things. I think in the very beginning, I was trying to monetize niche websites. So it was websites about specific topics, like a countertop ice making machine or something like that, right? Where you build a website, try to create really SEO rich content, and then drive traffic to that website, and then hope that you can make affiliate commissions by people clicking on a link that would then take them to Amazon or some other platform where they could purchase a product that they had read about on your site. And I remember that being one of the very first things I tried, because in law school we were away from home, we were in a different state, different community, all those things, and so that online component to it seemed attractive to me. And so we did that for a while. None of that really worked very well, honestly. I did reselling on Amazon. Like I would go to stores and find discounted product and then study them and see if they would sell well on Amazon, and then resold products on Amazon. I even in law school would go, they had a little book carousel in the front of the library at the law school. And every day I would go in there, I would pull up my Amazon seller app and I would scan all the barcodes on this book carousel. Because what I found out is that some of them would pop up and they would be selling for $100 or something like that. And these books you could buy at law school for $1, $2, $3. And so I even did that during my law school time. I would go in and I'd scan all the books, and if I could find 2 or 3 that I thought would be worth, my time, my effort to try to sell those, I would resell those books. And so, like, starting from that to kind of everything in between. So we've done some real estate stuff. We've done software. That's really what I spend more of my time on now when I'm not here at SUU is that software component, trying to build and grow that. And just, a million things in between. A lot of them have failed, a lot of them have not worked, a lot of them have cost money, time, and effort, but all of them have been good learning experiences that have led me to know, or at least understand about myself, what kinds of businesses I want to start, what kinds of businesses I want to grow. And so that's been a great learning lesson as I continue forward in entrepreneurship and trying to figure it out, as having all those experiences up to this point that have kind of shaped and formed the way I want to do it now.
Okay, cool. What has been your most successful business or entrepreneurship venture?
Yeah, so we've done some real estate things that, from a money standpoint have been great. We raised some money and put them in real estate investment groups, that sort of thing, and those have been really great from a money making perspective. But when it comes to just, I guess the way I would define the success is, yes, it's making money, but it's also taught me a lot of really important lessons and been a really fun experience. Is probably the software company we work on now, and essentially what we've done over the last several years is tried to use all these social media platforms that people are already on, and then let our software make those social media platforms more useful for entrepreneurs, for business owners that are using those platforms already to try to generate leads and sales on those platforms. And so our tool kind of helps optimize that opportunity on those platforms. And that's what we've spent, like I said, the last several years working, building, and that's been just tons and tons of great lessons doing that, and also been good in terms of its returns to us as well.
If someone listening wants to start a business primarily to escape a bad job or burnout, what would you want them to think through first?
Yeah, so starting a business only because you feel burnout or don't like your job, in my opinion, I don't think that's the first right approach. The reason I say that is because you might be burned out from a job or from the hours you're working for somebody else and need a change. But entrepreneurship may not necessarily be the change that is right for you at the time. Now, I'm not saying entrepreneurship can't be for anybody. I think anybody could do entrepreneurship, their own variety of it if they want to. But I would just caution them that just because you're burned out with a job or with a boss or whatever it is, doesn't mean entrepreneurship is going to be the correct answer every time. Now, it may be, but not every time. And so we're understanding the work involved and the risk involved when you do go and start your own thing, especially if that thing, that new opportunity is the only thing that's going to pay your bills and support your life and do all those things. You've got to make sure that you have enough confidence and support and resources available to you to really make that work. Because if you don't, then what's the backup and what's the other thing that can help you sustain your life? Now, I tell students, on that same note, that college is an incredible time to take chances and to try to build businesses and do all those things, because from a responsibility standpoint, a lot of college students have less responsibility now than they would 10 years in the future, right? Just naturally as human beings. But at the same time, and this has kind of been my approach, I think entrepreneurship can be handled or built, sought after in a pretty responsible way where you can hedge your bets to a degree and do it in a responsible way that also allows you maybe some safety while taking some risk, and then letting you kind of dip your toe in the water. Understand, does this feel right to me? Is this something that's I really want to pursue now and into the future? Or is this an experience I just need to have and then I know I can go back to something different? Right. And so those are some things I would consider before jumping in, because again, there's so many factors that are involved in entrepreneurship. And whether you're a college student or a 60-year-old, you have to decide if that makes sense for your life, your goals, and what you're trying to get out of, creating your own opportunity.
What's the most common financial mistake you see first-time founders make?
And when you say financial, I think this is both a financial mistake, but also just a mistake related to building and growing a business. Is I think I've seen a lot of students, especially a lot of entrepreneurs, that will jump into an idea, a product, a service, it doesn't matter what it is, but they jump into an idea believing themselves that there is a market or an audience that wants to purchase that product or that service. But just because that founder, that entrepreneur thinks they want that solution or they would want that product doesn't mean there's enough people in the world that want that same solution to sustain a business over time. And so really the demand in the market, I think, is where most entrepreneurs make the biggest mistakes and oftentimes the most costly mistakes. Because if I get in and I'm going to sell a widget and I think everybody's going to want to buy this widget, and I go before testing the market and validating the market, I go and spend a lot of money to produce that and a lot of money to market that product and a lot of money to build a website around that product. And then I launch it to the world and it's crickets. Really, the issue there is not that you spent money unwisely. It's that we didn't validate the opportunity. We didn't understand and know there was demand for that product or service prior to taking all those other steps. And so this is why we always teach lean startup in our classes and teach students how to get to profitability quickly, learn how to fail quickly, understand if there's demand early on in your business, because once you do, that risk starts to be eliminated over time because you see validation, you get feedback, and those initial early adopters and purchasers start to give you that opportunity that you need to continue to grow and expand because you know there's demand, you know there's opportunity for you to grow a legitimate business that have a base of customers that can sustain what it is you're trying to grow.
When you say validation, could you explain a little bit more about what that means, what it looks like for different people, and how to get it?
Yeah. And so validation can be different depending on what you're selling, a product, a service, anything else that you might be selling. And validation can look differently depending on what you're doing. But really, validation is, can I expose the market, my potential market? And again, you have to define who you think your customer base is. And maybe you have different customer segments that you've come up with, and even running through all those different segments with this testing, with this validation. But really, it's exposing your product or service to the market and then getting feedback from people about what it is you're trying to sell. And that feedback doesn't necessarily have to just be in the form of, hey, did they buy or did they not? It could be feedback about what do they like? What don't they like? Do they already pay for a solution or some benefit that's similar to what it is we're trying to sell? And that validation can happen online. You can do that online. You can do that through AI tools a little bit now. You can do that in person. You can do that by finding out where your customers are already hanging out and then get in front of them. Again, whether that's face to face or virtually online, whatever it might be, get in front of them and start to ask those questions, start to get that feedback, the validation, because that's not only going to help you know whether or not you've got an idea that can float, but it also is going to let you know, is there ways that I need to change or reformulate my product or my service that best serves that customer base that I think I'm trying to serve? And so, again, validation, lots of different forms, but those are some general basic ideas about where to go, how to do it. But every product and service is going to be a little different. But the real reality is you just need to know, is there demand? Do they like what it is you're offering, and would they pay for it? That's really what we're trying to figure out.
Okay. How much financial runway do you realistically think a young adult should have before starting a business?
Financial runway. Yeah, obviously, some businesses are going to be much more capital intensive than others. Like if I wanted to go start a medical device business today, I've got to have some, I've got to have some capital resources available to me because I need manufacturing and production and sales teams and all these pieces that would make that kind of business work. But I think that's what's really awesome about the world we live in today with technology and AI specifically, and so many free tools at our fingertips. Really, in my mind, students could start a business today with zero cost to themselves. And they could validate today with zero cost to themselves because of the tools, because of the technology and the resources that are available to us. Again, especially with how AI is growing and changing the world we live in. Man, I just think you can pretty much pursue most opportunities without sacrificing a bunch of money, time, and effort. Now, again, this is not applicable to every business, but any new opportunity you want to try, you can do a lot of that legwork through these tools that are available to us today. And so financial runway totally depends, but I really think you can start something significant today with no money in your pocket.
Stress, pressure, and decision fatigue aren't talked about enough. Can you describe a period where the mental or emotional load of entrepreneurship surprised you?
Yeah, so I've referenced this software company we ran a couple times, and this has been a couple years ago. We had grown the business pretty significantly, at least in my mind, and had been doing it for a couple years at that point. And then for whatever reason, and I don't know if it was life circumstances or growing tired of the business, growing tired of the effort, whatever else was going on in my life, I don't know. But I remember hitting this time of just kind of boredom with wanting to continue to build and pursue and deal with the challenges and the problems related to that business. Now, fortunately for me, I had a great business partner that helped kind of carry us through these times of me not being highly engaged and not being in this growth mindset of, hey, what can we do next to change and build and make it different? So I feel lucky for that. But again, I think that was more of a product of life in general, stresses of life, stresses of business, responsibilities. I've got 5 kids, and so maybe it was partly the stress of children and, whatever things are going on in your life. And I think that's gonna happen to any entrepreneur, whether you've got a family or you don't, or you're a lone wolf running your own business. Like, you're gonna run into situations where you might think to yourself, "Hey, it would have been easier, better, less stressful for me to be at a 9 to 5 job." Or when I clock out, my brain turns off. I don't think about the job again until I show up the next morning. And there's some value and benefit to that, certainly, right? Because you're not 24/7 constantly engaged in, oh, I've got to think about this, oh, and I didn't do this, and I need to be doing this. That happens sometimes when you're running a business. Now, I think if you set up the right processes and systems and those things, you can help alleviate a lot of that as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. And fortunately, like in our software business, we've been able to do a lot of that where we've set up systems that have made that process of growing and building easier. But you're going to hit it no matter what. And I don't care if it's in the beginning of your business, 10 years down the road or whatever it is. But I guess my only advice related to all that, to make a really long answer, maybe concise in a few words, is just know from when you start, if you're willing to be consistent, even when it gets a little difficult or you get bored or you get overwhelmed by something, just one foot in front of the other, even if it's, hey, I can only do this little thing today as it relates to building, growing business or keeping it afloat. I think if you just persist and you persist through those hard times, eventually what happens is you start to catch momentum through new opportunities or new partnerships or new growth phases or whatever it might be in your business. And those start to then help, that momentum then starts to help you rise to the top again to where you feel excited and passionate and a willingness to work hard and build a business like you felt when you first started, right? And so again, it's the up and down, but I think anybody can make it through if they just stay persistent, even if it's at the lowest level of persistence. Just keep going, just don't stop.
You mentioned a little bit about systems, and could you explain a little bit more about what a system is and why it's important as a business grows?
Yeah, so systems are obviously different depending on what business you're going to run. But it was told to me one time, and I can't remember who said this to me, but they said if you really want to build processes and systems, the first thing you need to do is really either record, write down, or video record, or do something showing you doing everyday things in your business. So document that process best you can. Now, the reason that's beneficial is obviously we can hand that off to employees, we can hand that off to other people that can do those same things, right? Now, that means we have to give some trust to employees and people, and we have to let them do it their own way. And I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is hard because the business is our baby, and to turn something over to somebody else and let them do it their way may not be the exact same way we do it. And so there's control that we have to give up. But I think, again, documenting, recording, understanding what your day to day operations are inside of your business, no matter what it might be, and then being able to hand that off to somebody, or in today's world, hand that off to AI, for example, right? There's a lot of things now that AI can do as far as like repeatable work that happens every day inside of a business. Those are things we can start to hand to AI, even these AI agents, right? That can do a lot of these things that make our life so much easier and free us up to spend time not just working in the business, but working on the business, understanding the business as a whole and what things need to happen to let it continue to grow and progress. I always tell students too with this whole message is the E-Myth or the E-Myth Revisited, that book, read that book. That will teach you more about what it means to be an entrepreneur versus somebody that works in your business or an employee in your business, because entrepreneurs can really act like employees sometimes, right? If we get bogged down in the day to day and the just stuff that we have to take care of. And so that book really opened my eyes to ways that you can expand, grow, create systems and processes and put yourself in the right position as the founder to then again grow the business versus just putting out fires day to day inside the business.
Failure is often glamorized as a learning experience. Can you share an example of a failure or setback that was genuinely painful, not inspirational in the moment, and what it cost you?
Yeah, there's been a ton of failures, and I think a lot of my failures have related to me being exposed to an idea or an opportunity, somewhere in the world of entrepreneurship. And then I'm kind of, to a fault, like to jump in and spend money and try something initially before maybe doing sufficient research or sufficient study regarding that idea. And this is the same thing I told you about validating the idea, right? There's been times when I've done that and have not done that well, validating the idea, jumped in thinking it would work, and then it doesn't because there's no demand. There's also been even relatively recently, there's also been, and this is less of maybe an entrepreneurial idea or opportunity, but more of like an investment opportunity where I had rubbed shoulders with another entrepreneur that had proposed this concept to me about, it was in the trading world, and proposed this concept to me about how to do it and why it's going to be great, and hey, it only takes this amount of money to get started in this thing. And I knew this entrepreneur, I trusted him, and so quickly said, hey, yeah, let me give you money, let's see this thing work, but did very little of my own homework and very little of my own research. And I would love to say that, hey, when that's happened to me in the past, I've changed and fixed it every time since then. No, it's happened again. It's repeated over time to some degree. But I think that's part of the reason why entrepreneurship is great. Is sometimes you need that lesson to hit you over the head, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times before we then start to realize, okay, yes, something we're doing here in this process is not working the right way, and I need to change the way I approach it. And so that happened with me, this investment opportunity, that I realized, hey, I need to change the way I approach these opportunities, slow my roll a little bit, and figure out from a research point of view how to approach this in a safer way. Now, that doesn't mean as an entrepreneur I'm discouraging people jumping in and trying and failing fast, because I think that's really important and I think that's vital. But it is this balance of doing that while still being calculated, still being well researched, so that when we do jump in, we feel like we have the knowledge, or at least the basic knowledge necessary to give that opportunity really its best opportunity of succeeding, I guess is what I should say. And so kind of balancing those two worlds, I think, is what's important.
Have you ever had to walk an I- Hmm. Have you ever had to walk away from an idea that you loved, and how did you know it was time?
Yeah, so I mentioned to you the starting with reselling on Amazon and doing a few things over the years. One of the things we started to do on Amazon is we started to sell ebooks when Kindle had become really popular and people were buying those. And I was not a writer, I was not an author. And so what we did is we would hire ghostwriters to write about various topics. And the reason we decided on certain topics over others is because of the research that we would do, given whatever opportunity we think might have been available in that niche or in that space, in that industry. And so we wrote books about a bunch of different things. I loved that business for quite a while because once the ghostwriting was done and once the marketing piece had kind of been established, at least back then, inside of that Kindle world, the income was relatively passive and it was really a cool opportunity. But one hard thing about building a business on somebody else's platform like Amazon is that over time they change. Algorithms
Mhm.
change, the way they sell change, the way they promote authors and books and content changes. And so we didn't keep up well with those changes. And so what we found over time is those books that had performed so well and made us money and done great things started to slump off and started to not sell so well and started to be beat by competitors and all these things, right? And for a while, I kept pushing, 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 trying to make it work, thinking, hey, this is still an opportunity. This is still something that I think can work. But my effort or my commitment to that concept in that business was not equal to the changes that were happening. And so I didn't keep up with what was necessary. And so one day I just finally decided, after doing this for some time, that I was not ready or in a place to give the effort necessary to kind of resurrect this business, bring it out from where it had been buried, and build it again. And so, even though I love the idea and I love the concept, and it treated me really well for a period of time, at that time I just said, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna fold this up and put it away and take those good lessons and apply them to something else." Now, it doesn't mean today you can't still jump in and do Kindle books and all those things, right? I think there's still opportunity, but I think there's phases of entrepreneurship where we may realize that, hey, we're beyond this phase and it's time for something new or a different direction or a different approach, and you just have to know when to admit that and be okay moving forward.
If you could force every aspiring entrepreneur to master one thing before starting a business, what would it be and why?
That's the one thing, and I've alluded to this a little bit already. I think maybe a two-part answer. I think mastering the idea of being consistent, and sometimes that's not just a entrepreneurial skill to master, that's kind of a life skill, is being consistent just with anything in our lives, right? It's easy to give things up. It's easy to say, "Hey, this is too hard," or, "Hey, I'm not going to continue to do this thing if it's not giving me the return I want." And so practicing what it means to be consistent. And when I say consistent, there's not a timeline necessarily like, "Hey, it has to be 6 months," or, "Hey, it has to be a year." But I think you as an individual, as an entrepreneur, start to feel and understand and know that the time or the commitment required of you to really see something through and see if an opportunity is worth sticking with. I think you feel that, but it does require that consistency. And so training yourself, however you have to do that in your life, to be consistent. That's one. And I think coupled with that is the consistency, but what I've already said before, the ability to validate, test, and try an idea in a really skillful, useful way that prevents you from wasting a lot of time, money, and effort. If you can do that really well with ideas in the beginning, you're going to be able to sift through all kinds of ideas without wasting a ton of time, energy, and effort. And if you can do that really well, you're going to be able to hit ideas that are big ideas, that are long standing, long growing ideas, because you've gotten so good at testing one idea to the next. And man, that skill itself could support you your whole life if you can do that really well. Because again, if 10 ideas don't work, you're just on to the next. And if you know how to validate well, you're eventually going to hit one that's going to make you money, give you opportunity, fulfill you in whatever way you're looking for. And I think those two things, the consistency and understanding how to test and validate, would carry most entrepreneurs most of the way.
How do you personally define success in entrepreneurship, and has that definition changed over time?
Yeah, so I think this is something I talk about in some of my classes as well. I think entrepreneurship is different for everybody. Some people want to build $1 billion business. Some people want to do a side hustle and just make a few $100 a month or whatever it is, right? And so I think my perception of entrepreneurship has certainly changed over time, and I think my desired outcome for being an entrepreneur and doing entrepreneurship has changed over time as well. Because I think initially it started because, hey, I just need money. I want money, and I want to pursue ideas and opportunities that are going to create money making opportunities for me. Do I still want to make money when I pursue an opportunity today? Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that's one of our best gauges of whether or not you're really providing true value to the world is, are people exchanging their dollars with you for that, right? But it's not just that anymore, right? You can impact people in a huge way by those you hire, or the service or product you provide changes people's lives in some way, right? And the money is just kind of a icing on the top for that, right? But I think my biggest goal, my biggest desire with entrepreneurship is, yeah, I want to provide value to the world. I want to help better people's lives. But even more important than that, I just want to be able to create an opportunity that gives me flexibility and freedom and autonomy to be with, spend time with the people that are important to me, while also while also still feeling fulfilled by the good or the value that I'm providing the world. And I think entrepreneurship can do all those things. And again, every entrepreneur has different goals, but for me, it's, can I create opportunities that, yes, can make money and be a signal and a sign of value in the world? Great, but I also want to be able to have those systems and processes we've talked about before. Have the right kinds of businesses that allow me freedom to be with, spend time with people that are important, whether that's students or that's my wife or that's my kids or that's my family in general. that's kind of my goal is what things can I do in entrepreneurship that allow me that ability to make those choices in my life and not be dictated by, hey, I have to be here because I have to have this money or I have to be here because somebody said so. It's because I've made that choice and built something that's allowed me to have that autonomy in my life.
Thank you so much, Landon, for joining us. And thank you, for friends, for listening into this episode. As always, if you're figuring out adulthood and feeling a little underprepared, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Connect with us through WeThriveLife.com, Instagram, or email, and share this episode with someone who needs it. This is We Thrive Life, where we conquer adulthood together.